As I was leaving, the waitress locked the door and whispered, "Promise you won't pass out." Then I felt my knees weaken. I laughed awkwardly, the way people do when they're embarrassed for no reason they can explain. "I'm fine," I said, though my chest felt tight, as if someone had tied a rope around my ribs and kept pulling. The restaurant was almost empty, just a few tables, a couple finishing dessert, and the soft hum of a Christmas song playing too cheerfully for how heavy the air suddenly felt. The waitress didn't laugh back. She looked at me the way doctors look at patients before delivering bad news. She glanced toward the counter, then toward the kitchen door, then back at me. Her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her apron. "Sir, please sit," she said quietly, "just for a minute." That's when I noticed the door. The click of the lock echoed louder than it should have. I sat. Only then did the pain begin, not in my body but somewhere much deeper. Just 20 minutes earlier, I had been standing proudly at that same table, smoothing my old coat, straightening my back, telling myself that today, Christmas Day, would be different. I had imagined warmth, laughter, maybe even gratitude. I had imagined my children smiling at me. Instead, I heard my son's voice, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Why is he even here?" The word he cut deeper than father ever could. My daughter laughed, not nervously, not apologetically. She laughed the way people laugh when they're entertained. "Dad, seriously," she said, waving her hand like she was brushing away smoke. "This place is expensive. You could have just eaten at home, alone." The table went quiet for half a second, just enough time for hope to flicker. Then my youngest added, "Old man, nobody wants you here. Eat alone." Someone at the next table turned to look. A woman near the window froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. The waiter pretended not to hear, but his ears burned red. I stood there holding a small gift bag. Inside were 3 modest presents I had saved for: scarves, gloves, nothing fancy. My pension didn't stretch far, but I wanted them to have something from me. Something that said, "I still matter." My son pushed the bag back toward me with one finger. "We didn't get you anything," he said. "Didn't think you'd show up." That's when I felt it, the slow, suffocating realization that I wasn't just unwanted. I was embarrassing. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't remind them of the nights I stayed awake when they were sick, or the jobs I worked with bleeding hands, or the meals I skipped so they could eat better. I just nodded. Silence is a strange thing. It can be dignity or it can be surrender. That day it felt like the latter. I picked up my coat and walked toward the door, every step heavy with eyes on my back. Someone whispered, someone sighed, someone shook their head. And then the waitress stopped me. "Which brings me back to the locked door." "Sir," she said again, softer now, "I heard everything." I swallowed. My throat burned, but no tears came. Pain has a way of drying you out completely. "I just wanted to eat with them," I said. I hadn't planned to speak, but the words escaped anyway. Once a year didn't feel like too much to ask. She nodded slowly. "I know." She leaned closer and lowered her voice. "They left without paying." The room tilted. For a second, I truly thought I might pass out. Right there on the cheap tiled floor of a restaurant decorated with fake snow and plastic reindeer. "They said," she continued, "that you would cover it, all of it." I laughed again, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, something inside me might shatter beyond repair. The bill was more than my monthly groceries, more than my electricity, more than the medicine I rationed carefully each week. Public humiliation is bad enough. But financial betrayal, wrapped inside family cruelty, is a different kind of pain. It sinks into places you didn't know existed. I looked around the restaurant. Every face now made sense, the glances, the silence, the pity. To them, I wasn't a father abandoned by his children. I was an old man who couldn't control his family. An old man who had failed. The waitress slid the receipt toward me but didn't let go of it. "Sir, there's more." My hands shook. They weren't just cruel, she whispered. They were laughing in the hallway about how you'd probably just pay and go home. Something cracked then, not loudly, quietly, the most dangerous kind of crack. Because in that moment, I realized something painful and clear. They didn't see me as human anymore. They saw me as useful. The pain wasn't loud, it didn't scream. It sat in my chest like a heavy stone, pressing down on every memory I had ever cherished. Birthdays, first steps, school plays. All of it suddenly felt unpaid. And as I sat there, locked inside a restaurant on Christmas Day, humiliated, abandoned, and underestimated, one truth became unavoidable. They believed my story was over. They believed I would quietly suffer. They were wrong. Backhand index pointing right before this story continues. Take a moment to support our channel. Subscribe to Silent Revenge Story. Share this video with someone who loves powerful life lessons. And press the bell icon so you never miss a story that speaks from the soul. The waitress finally released the receipt and stepped back, giving me space the way people do when they don't know whether to comfort you or protect themselves from your shame. I looked at the numbers again, hoping they would change if I stared long enough. They didn't. Every second I stood there felt like a spotlight burning through my coat, my skin, my bones. The few remaining customers pretended to be absorbed in their phones, but I could feel their awareness of me, sharp, curious, judgmental. An old man abandoned on Christmas. The manager came out from the kitchen. Tall, clean-shaven, polite in the professional way that never quite reaches the eyes. He smiled, but it was tight. "Sir," he said loudly enough for the room to hear, "there seems to be an issue with the bill." I nodded, my voice refused to come. "They said you'd take care of it," he continued, glancing toward the door my children had used to escape. "Is that correct?" The word they landed like a slap. "Yes," I finally whispered. A woman near the window shook her head slowly, not at them. At me. That hurt more than anger ever could. The manager cleared his throat. "We do need payment before closing the table." Closing the table. As if the table was the problem. As if it hadn't been filled with laughter minutes ago, just not laughter meant for me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. It felt lighter than it should have, as if it already knew what was coming. I counted the cash once, twice. Not enough. My face burned. My ears rang. I could hear my own heartbeat loud and panicked like it was trying to escape my chest. "I can pay part now," I said. "The rest I'll come back tomorrow." The manager hesitated. His eyes flicked around the room. Rules mattered. Appearances mattered more. "We don't usually allow that," he said. That's when a man from the corner table spoke up. "If you can't afford it," he said casually, "maybe you shouldn't be dining here." A few people chuckled. Something inside me folded in on itself. I wanted to explain. I wanted to say I hadn't ordered the wine or the extra desserts or the expensive steaks. I wanted to say I'd only had soup, that I'd planned to pay for my own meal quietly. But explanations are useless when people have already chosen their story. And in theirs, I was a foolish old man trying to live beyond his means. The waitress stepped forward suddenly. "It wasn't his fault," she said louder now. "They." The manager cut her off with a look. I shook my head at her gently. "Please, don't make it worse." I handed over everything in my wallet. The manager counted it, nodded, then paused. "You're still short," he said. The silence that followed was thick and cruel. A phone camera lifted, just slightly, enough for me to see the reflection in the glass. That was the moment the humiliation reached its peak, not because of the money, but because my pain had become content. I straightened my back. "Call the police," I said calmly. The room gasped, the manager blinked. "Sir, that won't be necessary." "I insist," I replied, "because my children committed fraud and they used my name." The word children rippled through the room. Heads turned, whispers bloomed. The manager hesitated again. Authority suddenly felt heavier when it came with complications. "I can put the rest on a temporary hold," he said carefully, "but you'll need to sign." I signed. Every letter of my name felt like a confession, to weakness, to misplaced love, to years of being taken for granted. As I walked toward the door, someone clapped, just once, slow, sarcastic. I didn't look back. Outside, the cold air hit me like a punishment. I stood on the sidewalk, lights blinking cheerfully above storefronts, couples laughing as they passed. No one stopped. No one asked if I was okay. Public humiliation doesn't end when you leave the room. It follows you, whispering that everyone knows, that everyone saw. On the bus ride home, I replayed it all. The words, the laughter, the way my son wouldn't meet my eyes, the ease with which they had left me behind. At home, I placed the unopened gift bag on the table and sat in the dark. The decorations I'd put up earlier suddenly looked foolish, childish, hopeful in a way that embarrassed me now. My phone buzzed. A message from my daughter. "Thanks for dinner. Next time, maybe don't make a scene." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted the message. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I didn't cry. Silence this time was not surrender. It was observation. Because humiliation teaches you something important if you let it. Who feels entitled to your pain, and who feels nothing at all. That night I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Documents, records, old agreements, names signed when my hands were stronger and my heart softer. I realized something then, sitting alone at my table with the gifts still wrapped and my pride stripped bare. They believed they had already taken everything from me. But humiliation has a strange side effect. It clears your vision. And as the Christmas lights blinked outside my window, I made a quiet decision. I would not confront them. I would not warn them. I would not beg for respect. I would let them continue, believing I was weak. Because the most shocking reversals don't begin with anger. They begin with silence. Silence is loud when you let it stretch. Days passed, then weeks. I didn't call, I didn't text. I didn't show up unannounced the way I used to, carrying groceries or fixing small things they never thanked me for. I became, all at once, exactly what they had accused me of being: absent. At first, it felt like punishment. My hands reached for the phone out of habit. My mouth formed apologies I didn't need to make. Years of being the one who bends don't disappear overnight. But something curious happens when you stop explaining yourself. The noise around you fades. I spent my mornings differently now. I woke early, prayed quietly, and walked to the small park near my building. I sat on the same bench each day, watching pigeons argue over crumbs, watching the sun rise without anyone demanding anything from me. No one interrupted my thoughts. No one needed money. No one mocked my presence. In that quiet, I began to remember who I was before I became convenient. At home, I opened drawers I'd avoided for years. Old files, old receipts, a locked box I'd almost forgotten existed. Inside were papers with my name printed boldly at the top, accounts, deeds, beneficiary forms. I read slowly, carefully. What shocked me wasn't what I owned. It was how much control I had given away without realizing it. My pension went into a joint account for ease, my daughter had said. My rental income was managed temporarily, my son had insisted. Permissions signed during hospital visits. Authorizations agreed to when I was tired, distracted, trusting. Love has a way of blinding you to fine print. I didn't rage, I didn't panic. I observed. Silence sharpened my mind. I visited the bank on a Tuesday morning when it was quiet. The same branch that would later become important, though I didn't know it yet. I waited my turn patiently and spoke politely, the way men my age are expected to. "I'd like to review my accounts," I said. The clerk smiled, "Of course." An hour later she stopped smiling. "There have been a lot of withdrawals," she said carefully. "I know," I replied. "I authorized them once." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Some of these were not single transactions." I nodded. "Freeze the joint access." She looked up surprised. "Immediately." "Yes." The word felt powerful in my mouth. She explained the process. I listened. I signed. I watched as doors quietly closed, not slammed, not announced, just closed. Walking out of the bank, I felt lighter, not happy, clear. My phone buzzed that evening. A missed call from my son. I didn't return it. The next day, another call, then a message. "Dad, did something happen with the account?" I read it once, then I placed the phone face down. Silence again. Power doesn't announce itself, it waits. A week later, my daughter showed up at my door. She stood there with practiced concern, eyes scanning my small apartment the way people do when they're measuring what you still have left. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. She smiled too quickly. "You didn't answer your phone." I didn't feel like it. She stepped inside without waiting for permission. "The bank said some things changed. They wouldn't tell me why." I poured tea slowly. "They shouldn't." Her smile thinned. "Dad, this isn't funny." "I'm not joking." Silence stretched between us, uncomfortable now for her. "You can't just cut us off," she said. "We depend on that money." I looked at her for a long moment. "No," I said softly, "you depend on me." Her eyes flashed. "After everything we've done for you." I set the cup down gently. "List it." She opened her mouth, closed it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply waited. Waiting is a form of power when the other person has nothing solid to stand on. She left angry, confused, uncertain. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. The calls increased after that. Messages piled up. My son tried humor, my daughter tried guilt, then frustration, then urgency. I answered none of it. Instead, I met with a lawyer recommended by a man at the park who liked to feed birds. Funny how wisdom hides in ordinary places. The lawyer listened, nodded, asked questions I hadn't thought to ask. "Did you know," he said, "that you can restructure everything without confrontation?" I smiled faintly. "I'm learning." Paperwork moved. Decisions were made quietly, legally, permanently. Weeks later, I received an invitation. Family dinner, their place, to clear the air. I considered it. Then I replied with one sentence. "I'll come." When I arrived, the table was set beautifully. Too beautifully. Apologies were rehearsed. Smiles were tight. They watched me carefully now, the way people watch something that used to be harmless and isn't anymore. We ate, we spoke of small things, the weather, traffic. Then my son leaned forward. "About the restaurant, things got out of hand." I nodded. "They did." My daughter added quickly, "We didn't mean for you to feel embarrassed." I took a sip of water. Intent doesn't erase impact. Silence. They shifted. This wasn't how these conversations usually went. "So," my son said, forcing a laugh, "about the accounts." "I've made arrangements," I said. "What kind of arrangements?" "The kind that protect me." Their eyes met. A flicker of fear passed between them. "You should have talked to us first," my daughter said. I smiled gently. "You should have talked to me before you walked out of that restaurant." No one spoke. For the first time in years, they were the ones unsure. The balance had shifted, not dramatically, not cruelly, but undeniably. I stood to leave. "Dad," my son said, voice tight, "are you punishing us?" I paused at the door. "No," I said, I'm correcting a mistake. Outside, the night air was cool and steady. I breathed deeply, feeling something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Peace. Because power doesn't come from revenge. It comes from reclaiming yourself. And this was only the beginning. Shock doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it slips in quietly, disguised as routine. 2 weeks after that dinner, my phone rang early in the morning. I recognized the number immediately, the bank branch. The same clerk who had once smiled too easily, then stopped smiling at all. "Sir," she said carefully, "there's been an attempt to access your accounts." I sat at the edge of my bed, calm. "By whom?" There was a pause. "Your children." I thanked her and hung up. I didn't feel anger. I felt confirmation. Later that day, my lawyer called. "They're pushing," he said, "not illegally but desperately." I looked out the window at the street below. Ordinary life moved on. People went to work. Children laughed. Somewhere, a radio played a song I didn't recognize. "Proceed," I said. What followed wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No confrontations. Just a sequence of events set in motion long before my children realized they were standing on thin ice. The rental property I owned, the one my son had been managing, had its lease renewed. Not by him, by me. The payments were redirected, the authority revoked, notices sent. My pension, once pooled and diluted through convenience, became precise again, clear, accountable. I signed documents that afternoon that changed the shape of their lives, without raising my voice once. That evening, my phone exploded. Calls, messages, voicemails layered with panic. "Dad, this is serious. You can't do this right now. We have bills. Answer your phone." I let it ring. Shock is loud on the other end when silence answers. The real impact came 3 days later. They showed up together this time. No rehearsed smiles, no polite concern, just raw urgency leaking through cracks they could no longer hide. My son spoke first. "The tenants called. They said you're the new contact." "Yes," I replied. "You went behind our backs." I tilted my head slightly. "You went behind mine first." My daughter stepped forward. "Dad, this is revenge." I shook my head. "No, this is correction." She laughed sharply. "You're doing this because of one dinner." "One dinner," I said softly, "revealed everything." Silence hit them then. Not the comfortable kind, but the kind that makes your ears ring. "You're hurting us," my son said. I met his eyes. "You hurt yourselves the moment you decided I was disposable." That word landed hard. Disposable. I hadn't planned to say it, but once spoken it couldn't be taken back, and it shouldn't have been. My daughter's voice cracked. "We're family." I nodded. Family doesn't lock an old man into a bill he can't afford and walk away laughing. Shock has stages. First denial. Then anger. Then realization. I watched all three move across their faces like passing weather. "What do you want?" my son asked finally. I considered the question carefully. "Respect," I said, "and distance." They stared at me as if I'd asked for something impossible. "You'll lose us," my daughter warned. I smiled gently. "You already left." That was the moment something inside them broke, not loudly, not violently, but cleanly, like a thread snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. They left without another word. Days passed. Then the consequences deepened. My son's lifestyle, built on money that no longer flowed, began to shrink. Credit calls followed. Deadlines loomed. The safety net vanished. My daughter called crying one night. "We didn't think you'd go this far." I listened. "Neither did I said honestly, "but here we are." Shock revenge isn't about watching others suffer. It's about letting reality speak without interruption. The final blow came quietly. A letter. official, polite, unavoidable. It informed them that future financial assistance would be structured, conditional, and limited. No access, no assumptions, no entitlement. I signed it with a steady hand. When they received it, they didn't call. They came. This time they sat. No accusations, no anger, just exhaustion. "We were wrong," my son said. "I know," I replied. My daughter looked at the floor. "We forgot you were a person." That hurt. But it also healed something. "I didn't want revenge," I said. "I wanted dignity." They nodded slowly. For the first time, they understood that what they had lost wasn't money. It was control. And what I had gained wasn't power over them. It was power over myself. Shock revenge doesn't shout. It educates. It teaches people the cost of underestimating quiet strength. That night after they left, I sat alone again, but this time the loneliness didn't ache. It rested, because I had done the hardest thing an old man can do. I had chosen myself. Justice doesn't always look the way people expect it to. It isn't loud. It doesn't always punish. Sometimes it simply restores balance, quietly, firmly, without asking permission. Months passed. Life settled into a new rhythm, one I hadn't known I was allowed to have. My mornings were slow. My meals were simple. My finances were clear, finally honest. For the first time in years, no one reached into my pockets without asking. My children kept their distance at first, not out of anger, but out of uncertainty. They didn't know where they stood anymore. Neither did I. One afternoon, my daughter came alone. No urgency, no agenda. She brought tea I liked and placed it carefully on the table, as if afraid to disturb something fragile. "I've been thinking," she said. I waited. "About that night," she continued, "at the restaurant." I nodded once. "We were cruel," she said quietly. "Not careless, not thoughtless, cruel." The word sat between us, heavy but honest. "I replay it sometimes," she added. "The way people looked at you, the way we didn't." I studied her face. She looked older somehow, less certain, more human. "I don't need apologies," I said. "I needed understanding. Apologies come later if they're real." She swallowed. "They are. Justice doesn't demand instant forgiveness. It allows accountability to mature." Over time, my son followed, not to ask for money, not to negotiate control, just to sit, to talk, to listen. "I built my life assuming you'd always catch me," he admitted one evening. "I didn't think about what it cost you to keep standing." "That's common," I replied. "It's easier to lean than to look down." They began to change, not dramatically, not perfectly, but sincerely. They learned limits. They learned consequences. They learned that love without respect rots from the inside. And I learned something too. That boundaries don't destroy families. They reveal who is willing to grow. The waitress from the restaurant wrote me a letter weeks later. She said she'd thought about me often, that she'd locked the door that night because she didn't want me collapsing in public, not again. She ended the letter with one sentence: "I hope they see you now." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box where I keep things that remind me who I am. On the anniversary of that Christmas, I returned to the same restaurant, same coat, same posture, different man. I sat alone by choice. The manager recognized me. His eyes widened slightly, then softened. "Your table," he said respectfully. I ordered soup. As I ate, I noticed something strange. No shame. No tightness in my chest. No invisible eyes judging me. The pain that once defined me had transformed into something steadier, self-respect. That was justice. Later that night, I called my children. Not to invite them. Not to test them. Just to speak. "I'm proud of the progress you've made," I said, "and I'm proud of myself for demanding it." There was silence on the line. Then my son said, "We're proud of you too." It sounded different this time. Earned. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about truth being acknowledged without excuses. My children no longer see me as a wallet. They see me as a man who stood up late, but stood fully. And I no longer see myself as someone who must earn a seat at the table. I bring my own chair now. If there is a lesson in all this, it's simple and hard at the same time. Silence is not weakness. Pain is not the end. And dignity, once reclaimed, teaches others how to treat you or how to live without you. That night, as I turned off the lights, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not victory. Peace.